Hey there, in this video we're going to look at the objectives. It's the first step in the UX process, and really it's just a way of just making sure that what you're about to start doing has value, or it has the most value. Okay, there is a million things you can be doing in a business, so just checking where you're at and what you're trying to achieve with this is kind of aligned with what your business goals are is one part of it. Then it's just making sure you use the right language, not setting out on a yes or a succeed or fail path. I'll do it for a new course. Let's launch a new course, and if it doesn't work out and we fail, it's a bit of a miserable event. People get discouraged from trying new things, and it's all round a bad result. But if you take that exact same kind of task of launching a new course and you say that you set a hypothesis more like a scientist than setting a prize, you rephrase it in terms of let's test and let's check to see whether people will pay for this new course, and then it's a win-win. Okay, you're not going to lose. It's a yes or a no, but you have still succeeded in your objective. Okay, you've figured out whether people will pay or not, and you could do that once you've got to that stage there. With this kind of like UX process, you could move on to the next project rather than having to, like say in my terms of my courses, fill out the whole course, build all the courseware. Train the trainers, find the room, get all that sort of stuff done, then find out it fails. Okay, the nice thing about the UX process is getting this stuff done quick and easily, and setting the objective is probably the most important part of the whole thing. So once you've got that nice and clear, then you can move on to the next step and start doing your research. Hey, in this video, we're going to look at the UX researcher process. So we're in our second step of our design process now. So this is as it relates to a UX designer as well. What you're going to have to do here is one of two things. If you've got an existing kind of data that you can work with, great. You can kind of you can do some research and make some great assumptions from that research. Now, say you've got an existing website and it's a new feature, or an existing app and it's an extra little feature. So you're going to already have data analytics about the people and their movements and their how they're using the site. So you can kind of make some judgments from that and do that research from that existing data. If you've got a new idea and it's a new site, so it's a new site but an existing field, great. You can borrow some data, maybe census stuff, okay, from your industry, and okay. But say that it's a new app and it's brand new and it's never been developed before, or a website that's never been seen before. Then there's not going to be a whole lot of research you can do. Okay, you're going to find most value out of the actual mocking up and testing loop. Okay, so don't spend too much time in the research phase. It will depend on what you have available. Okay, at this stage. So the two main things are going to be looking at competitive research, okay, competitor research, okay, to see who else is out there, and we'll do that in the next video, and then we'll move on to probably the most important part of the research process, and that is building your persona or your user profile. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Okay, in this video we're going to look at competitor research. Now we're still in our research phase, and competitor research can be just as simple as a Google search, just to see who's out there, who's doing, a client might have come to you with this brand new idea that nobody's ever thought about, except you find there's actually lots out there that kind of does the same sort of thing. And what you might need to do then is look at your, what can make yours special, what's your unique selling point, what's your positioning compared to the competitors. Or it might be that it's just new to your area, and that can be really handy as well. You can go off and find something that you might have a new website that's, it's a restaurant guide, okay, but it's for a specific area, and you can find, that's currently underserviced or not serviced. There's a terrible one and they want to do a better one. You just go out and find the other great ones. Look at different countries. If you're in the US, look at different states. If look to the UK, look to Europe, Australia, for different markets. They might have an amazing thing doing well there, that you can kind of, we'll call it appropriation, not stealing, okay, ideas to help inform your designs when you move into the kind of mock-up stage. All right, so competitor research, easy, quickly to do, and really can help inform your UI design. Hey, welcome to this video. We're going to be talking about buyer personas or user profiles. Now, they're the same thing, different words for the same thing, and they are key to every UX project. It's a way of keeping everybody on the same page. So if you don't have things like buyer personas, then you can have the development guys thinking, or girls thinking, oh, this is who it's for, and they're developing for them. The copywriter is thinking it's somebody else. Everybody coming up with their own ideas of who this thing is for. You might have a general consensus. Without a clear user profile, they can go off and everybody designing different things for different people. So buyer personas look like this. They are super simple. They just have basic details about the person. You need to give it a name. I don't know why, but you got to give them a physical name just so that when you're talking about it, you're talking about say some of my user profiles for some of the courses that I do might be Developer Dave. Okay, Developer Dave is X, Y, and Z, but for some reason he's got to be called Developer Dave, or Website Wendy is another one. I don't know why. They both have to have the same first letters. Okay, you can rock that boat. But you come up with the basic details, not too much detail. I've seen some user profiles that are like a full A4 page, maybe 2 pages long about their profile. Now, you just want what's relevant to your product. You don't want to know what they've had for breakfast unless your product or your website is about what they have for breakfast. What car they drive is not that useful unless your app is for driving, okay, or racing, or it gives some sort of benefit, and kind of really helps understand the person. So keep it short and simple. Make sure you print them out, you stick them to the walls around when everybody is, okay, in the meeting rooms, in the kitchens, that everybody knows and can be reminded about what you're there for. You're there for Developer Dave and what his interests are. Now, the most important part of creating a user profile is actually using them. As a UX designer, I know that they're useful and I use them and I work to them. It's great to have conversations and meetings to say, instead of saying, I don't think you should be using that, I say, Developer Dave doesn't really like that. So you can have these kind of like third-party conversations without getting everybody's back up. But as a business owner, I get a little scared of them, okay? Because I want to launch a new product or a new service, and I don't want to kind of narrow it down to the buyer persona in case I'm wrong, okay? And I exclude some people. So I want it to be, generic, and I make it maybe a bit too much. Everything for everybody becomes nothing for nobody, okay? So you need to kind of keep it down to, bring it back to this user profile. Don't be afraid to change your user profile. If it's not working, test it. If it's not working, adjust it, adapt it, but don't make them and then file it away in the drawer and never use them, okay? Print them off, stick them where people can see them, in meeting rooms, next to the developers, near the copywriters. If it's just you, put them up in your bedroom, just so that you can, be reminded of you're developing for, Developer Dave or Website Wendy, okay? Whoever you decide your user profiles are, okay, and their names, that you can have those, have them up and around. Now, when you're creating a user profile, you really need to do it as a group. Don't just do it as a UX designer, okay? Do it by yourself and then kind of deliver it to them and say, here's our profiles. They might be right, but they won't get what's really important, and it's the buy-in from what's called the stakeholders. I hate that word, okay, stakeholders, but it gets used lots in UX and you need to start using it. And it's the people that have an interest in the, interest in the project. It might be the business owner, it might be the CFO, it might be, one of the investors, it might be the HR manager because it relates to her or him. So make sure everybody's involved with making the buyer personas. And because what happens is if you do it by yourself and deliver it, they can say, ooh, and it doesn't go well, and that's like, it's your buyer persona, like I didn't agree with it. But if you do it together, I'm going to give you some rules and some tips of how to do it together. But you can imagine if you all put this time and effort together, it doesn't have to be long, but you come up with them together, then you've all got an invested interest, or at least everybody's on the same page. Nobody can say later on, oh, geez, that buyer persona that Dan came up with really wasn't on the mark, okay? You want everybody to be working together to build it so that they've got an interest in it, and when, when they're testing it, they understand it fully and really kind of embrace it. So make sure you do it together and build it together, even if you are kind of set off to do it by yourself. Try and draw everybody back in to build up personas. Now, how many buyer personas should you have? 1 or 2. Okay, you don't need 5 probably. You definitely don't need 10. I've seen them all. Okay, you just really want to have just enough. okay, to get it really clear, but without having too many conflicting personas. It's not helpful. Okay, I've tried it, it doesn't work. Where you might have to have, say, 3 is when you've got a product that has lots of kind of different people coming from different directions. One example is I was helping somebody with, it's like an accounting online kind of SaaS solution for online accounting. Now, they had very clearly different roles for that. So instead of just different people using it, let's say like for my business, I use something called Xero. Now, Xero would have different profiles because they've got me as the business owner using it. I need to use a certain amount of tools and use it for a certain kind of way. Okay, I'm looking at reporting. I'm looking at everything really, but one of my biggest things is the kind of like monthly reports, okay, profit and loss, those sorts of things. Now, somebody else in my business, okay, that does the bookkeeping, her role is just producing invoices and chasing invoices up. Okay, so they want to use the product very differently from what I want to use. I want to use a lot more features, but I don't want to make the invoices. That's not my, it's not what I want to do. Okay, so there's that. And then there's, say, some of my staff. My staff want to be using it differently. They use Xero in a way where all they do is put their receipts in, okay, and just claim expenses. That's all they want to use. They use an app, okay. I use the website version. So there's lots of people coming at this bit of software lots of different ways. So that's where you might have, a lot more personas, but say it's a website, often you only need 1 or 2, and that's what I try and stick to. Now there's 2 ways of making personas. You can do it from existing data. If you have some, borrow some data from other industries. Otherwise, you might have to, if it's quite new or quite unique, you might have to, do a best guess and then test that persona through your user testing process and kind of refine it as you learn more and get more and, examine more. So let's go and look at good ways of getting stuff from existing data. Great, so let's go through and see where you can pull information for your persona from your existing data. Now, you might be like me and you might have something like Google Analytics or Omniture or the Adobe version, okay, some sort of website tracking software. Okay, and for me, the nice thing about it is that, and maybe you say you're doing work for somebody else, you could ask for access to this. It's not hard to gain access to share for somebody to share the data with you. What you can do in, come in here under Audience, go to Overview, and under Overview, there is a few little things you can look at. Demographics is the one you want. Go to Overview. You can see easily here who on this current site, okay, who the age groups, okay, 25 to 34. It's mainly, is it mainly male or female? You can see mine's heavily male and mainly in this age group here. And what you can do is you can dig a little deeper, so you can go into age. Okay, that's the overview part, and you can start to see kind of a little bit of a breakdown. And over here, now my tracking over here is not hooked up on this site here, which is really bad of me. But what happens on other sites that I've got is that I know for a fact that even though this is 25 to 34 is my highest user, I know through other ways of tracking that actually this 35 to 44 is actually the majority of people that actually pay. So even though it's the 3rd smallest group, it's actually my most, the people that actually stay the longest on the site. You can see here a lot longer than these other groups. You can see it's funny, like the 18 to 24, a lot shorter, longer, okay? And as the age group gets higher, the average duration, that means they're staying on the site longer. And I know through other ways of tracking that the transactions are a lot higher. So if you can get access to this, you can do some nice things and kind of rule out, a user profile that you might have considered that is like 20, that is just out of university and needs, to upskill. I know through my training sites that it's, people that are a little bit more mature in my age group that are happy to pay for good training. So, same with gender. Okay, this is really interesting for me because I run both classroom training and online training, and classroom is complete flip of this. It's mainly about 70% female and 30% male that turn up to in-class stuff. But in terms of online training, it's mostly male. Okay, and that's across all the websites that I manage. So yeah, it really helps me get my personas nice and clear. Under interests is another one. Go to overview. You might be interested in how they get this data. There's things in your browser called cookies, and all the advertising groups track and try and work out bits. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. It's accurate enough. You can see here the most, my interests, the most interested in my site here is technophiles. Okay, that's really broad. There's some kind of like subgroups over here, but it's kind of useful. Shutterbugs, okay, because I do kind of photography stuff, and it can help kind of inform it. And everything else, another big one is geo. Okay, so if you're dealing with languages, that might be important. Mine's not. Mine's all English on this site here. And if I go to location though, and this is really important. So most of my business for this site comes from the US, a huge amount, 33%, and the next is 6 from the UK. Okay, so, but if I go into here, what this really helps me with my persona is, okay, it's people English speaking and in America in these states. So California and Texas are my biggest ones. And yeah, it's amazing what kind of details you can go into these things and kind of dive in, and you can start to see, in California, which cities are the highest ones. So San Francisco, San Jose, and what that's helped me to do, regardless of like UX and user profiles, those sorts of things are really interesting for me because I do lots of help online. So I do kind of video monthly sessions where I jump onto YouTube and do a kind of a live chat, and I just make sure my time zones kind of align to these groups. Okay, if it was big in the UK, it would be a very different time zone. So anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. Another one, behavior. No, technology is a useful one. So the main one that I like is mobile. If we go to overview, it's going to tell me some interesting stuff about desktop versus mobile versus tablet. So this is a really useful one if you are doing this persona where, how are they accessing this site? If it is mobile, okay, say it's flipped around and it's, 80% mobile, I'd spend a lot more time testing my mobile version. And in this case, because mine's hugely desktop, I don't ignore mobile, but it's not my main focus. Mainly people are using my site and interacting with my content, 80% of them through desktop. So that's where my kind of first point of call is. And when I'm designing, I design desktop first instead of mobile first, which a lot of people like at the moment. If you're doing with apps, it's going to be obviously different. Everything else in there's little bits and pieces, but that's the big stuff. Now, in terms of other existing data, you can go pay scale. We looked at this earlier, but if you have a profile and you've decided it's, your profile is a woman, she's in communications, she's mid-level, she's this, that, and the other, what you can do is you can go in here and figure out what kind of salary she's at. So it helps you kind of inform, whether she has disposable income, what kind of pay scale they're on. You might be thinking one thing, you think, oh yeah, they earn heaps. But then you actually go off and find out that they don't, okay, or they do. So use pay scale is a nice one. Another thing you can do is YouTube. So check that if it's yours or whether you're working for a client, ask if you can access to their YouTube, even if you just give you screenshots, okay? They don't have to give you super access. But if I look at this one here, this is my YouTube channel, and under analytics down here, okay, it's similar to analytics that we just saw before from Google Analytics. YouTube one here has some slight different stuff. So this is the people using the content on my site. I give away a lot of free stuff. And the things I'm looking for is overview. I'm looking for demographics again. Okay, and you can start to see 25 to 34. Okay, it's a different kind of skew in terms of the numbers of people watching the videos. Okay, but similar. And male to female, a lot more male, a lot less female. And yeah, you can dig in a little bit deeper, so you can view the gender and what else? Viewer age. Okay. You can dig into these guys here to see that's my biggest age group. You can start to see as part of that age group who they are. There's little bits of extra details in here. And this one here is quite nice geography. Okay, United States is huge. India is huge here, but did you notice that on my content on my site, it's actually from the UK? Okay, was my second biggest one. UK is fourth down here. So you got to kind of aggregate this type of information to try and work out your user profiles. And the last thing you can do is surveys. Now, I run surveys regularly. When I say regularly, every time I need to ask a question, I'll send a survey. So if you're part of this course, you'll probably get a survey sooner or later. I'll probably do it once a month or every 2 months. And what it allows me to do, SurveyMonkey is a great free tool. I use this one. It gives you everything you need mostly, as long as your numbers are not too low. Like I don't have a huge amount of people to email, so it's free. What it helps me do is helps the people that fill out the surveys. I ask questions about who they are, what they do, what they like about the site, what they like more, and it helps me, get that kind of user profile nice and tight, and I get an understanding of it. Now, there's a whole science to asking kind of these survey questions. So go off, do some research, send out a Survey Monkey to the people that you might have access to. They might be signed up to a newsletter, or you might grab, you might ask from the client to be able to send an email to the last month's transactions, okay, to see if you can get some feedback for your user profile. All right, one of the last things you can do for looking for existing data, if you don't have any kind of specific stuff about your users, like I've got for some of mine, I've got analytics and I've got YouTube, is you can go to things like the census, or you can go to industry groups. Quite often they'll sell you, traits and kind of like reports about a certain industry. So you can go and do those ones to get a more generic look at it. And if you can't find anything, in there that's useful, just make it up, okay? Make some good assumptions and then test them. So come up with a user profile based on best guess, and then go through the design and testing loop, and then start to see who are the people that are engaging with it. When you get your first few clients as well, go through and maybe adjust your user profile and just keep everybody up to date, with where you're at. And especially at the beginning when you haven't got a really clear pictures, it's going to be a bit of a fluid thing until you get a bit more of a solid understanding of who your users are. All right, this video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to run a group to get your personas. So what you don't want to do is do it yourself and then deliver them to people, because nobody's going to take ownership of them if you just kind of handed them up and told them this is what you should be thinking. Okay, what you want to do is, it doesn't have to be long, it doesn't have to be crazy organized. It can take half an hour in the boardroom, pretty ad hoc. Okay, it doesn't have to be super special, but what you need to do is you need to get buy-in from the stakeholders. Okay, the people that are going to be, investing their time in helping you. So it might be management, might be the boss, it might be the developer, it might be the graphic designer, whoever's actually going to be involved, the copywriter. Okay, and what you do is you finally get to use post-it notes. We've come along, and there's so many videos, and you've not seen a post-it note, and you're like, this is not a UX course. I'm sure there was post-it notes. So we've got some post-it notes now. So what happens is you facilitate it, okay, and you ask, you give, you could take the notes on the post-it notes, and what you do is you say, you describe, you talk about the product that you're going to be building, or the thing, or the feature, okay, and then you ask the group. You might have to jog everybody, get everybody started, but you ask people who are the kinds of people that might be using it. And what you do is you might have to facilitate it and kind of get it going. But after a while, I've run lots of these groups where people start after a little while, they go like, oh, okay, what about, let's say it's for, let's just pretend a mock exercise, and then I'm doing it for my course. I released a course for HTML5 banner ad advertising, okay? So let's say we did it as a group, and I'd suggest something simple like, okay, the types of people are probably, from my experience, are, say it's a girl, she's in her early 30s, and she used to do Flash, the old banner ad stuff, and now is kind of trying to get back into it. And so you write down just the basics. You say, give her a name. And that's kind of the fun part, is you say she is designer Danielle, and she is 30, early 30s, and she's moving back into that. And you just write it down. Okay, and then stick it to your wall or whiteboard. Okay, that's the fun stuff, sticking it to the whiteboard. Okay, then you ask somebody else, and somebody else might say, oh, it's actually, the type of people might be marketing people, it might be a young guy who's getting into it and is doing some freelance stuff and is having to turn down work, but needs to get into it. And you write that down and give him a name. He might be the Mike the marketer, okay, and you stick him up. And you go through and you try and, get everybody going and try and get something out of everybody. And once you've got it all, you stick them all up on the wall, okay, or the whiteboard, and you start looking like a UX designer, okay? And then as a group, okay, what you try and do then is try and put them into kind of like, because you might have come up with, say, 10 of them or 20 of them or 30 of them, how many have you come up with? And then try and kind of like combine them down. You might have some that are really similar. You might find, marketing Mark and, this other person that you've made up is actually, they've got very similar traits, so it'd be hard to define them. So then what you start doing is you start drawing circles with the whiteboard, okay, around a few groups, and you start adding them together. And what you're trying to do is boil it down to the absolute essentials. Okay, so it might be one person, it might be two, it might be three. Don't get more than three. Two's good. Okay, I find 2 is a nice working number for a lot of the projects. You might have some bigger projects or justifiably have some more, but those are the kind of numbers. And then what you do is, because I guess the process is, you'll then later on write up a more detailed one and flesh it out a little bit, not too far. Okay, my personas are always a paragraph, maybe 2, okay, just so that it's memorable and it's easy. Okay, and I guess what you've got to make sure is that, when you're grouping them together, is you don't really say, you don't kind of tell people what to do. You're kind of asking it, would these people kind of be the same? And you let the group, okay, chat it out, talk it out, because the idea of this process is not to actually, get a persona. It's mainly so that people can chat about it, talk about it, and kind of work through the details in their own heads so that when they are working on their parts of the project, remember they are stakeholders, okay, is that they are sitting down and like they've thought through why that original idea they had maybe isn't as useful now, because they chatted it out and they had discussions, and a half an hour of thinking through those problems will save people just later on if you hand it to them, and then them kind of like being a bit resilient to it. So that's, remember, the idea of the goal is for you to be a facilitator of getting ideas and having the chat, even if your user profiles that come out aren't perfect. It's not really about that. It's about kind of getting everybody thinking about the pros and cons and who might be using it, so that when they are doing their work, they are, they've got a good idea of where you're trying to head. Okay, so once you've got your post-it notes all up and you've drawn on the whiteboard with lots of stuff, and what you need to do then is make sure you do it straight away. Don't go off and build this amazing report, okay, that looks beautiful, and you deliver it and it's all this special thing, but people have lost the, kind of buzz from it. What you need to do is make sure you do it in the morning or the kind of early afternoon, so you've got some time afterwards, is to actually draft up a more complete version. So give them a name, add any bits that you think are really necessary, and kind of mold it into a good user profile, and then email it out to everybody. Print it up, stick it around, so it's not kind of like we did this and then next week we did that, and then what was that thing we did again? You want to kind of just do the task really informally. Print it off, stick it up in the lunchroom, stick it up in everybody's desks, so that you can get feedback, okay? And so that there's a bit of momentum, and when people are working on it, okay, say they're working on it at that time, they're actually ready to go, and they've clarified, because they might go off and start thinking and things kind of wander a little bit, and you lose that kind of power of that group session. So yeah, go off, tidy it up, make it look pretty if you want, add a photo. I sometimes do. I find some random online that fits a 32-year-old female in marketing. Okay, and I try and stick that in there. But I go through months where I'm doing it, and then months I don't because it's ridiculous. Okay, so have a bit of fun with it as well, but don't get too carried away with that user profile at this stage.